Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So, stay with us as right now we present a wonderful author for you today on the show. And today we're lucky because Jeff Rasley is here, and he's I'm going to have to ask him again because I've forgotten how many books he's written. It's been a bunch. And the latest one, which is just out now, I'm really intrigued with because it's called 72 Wisdoms. And it's about great things that people have said over time that he's taken and done something with it. And we're going to find out with what he has done with it. Then we're going to find that out right now. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm good. Good, and it's good to be with you again, Kevin.
It's great to have you here. The last time that you were here, we did it under my independence report, and so now we're doing it under Positive Talk Radio, and you'll be able to go to positivetalkradio.net and listen to this, or you can be watching live right now on YouTube or Facebook. So if Jeff looks really good sitting over there, and so we're going to have a great discussion. And as a matter of fact, I'm still working on the riddle he gave me at the beginning, and we'll get into that one in a little bit. But first of all, Jeff, it's great to have you here. And 72 Wisdoms is a guidebook to enhance your spiritual, psychological, and philosophical health. I love that. What gave you the idea to write this book?
Yeah, this book, and it's actually my 14th.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
it came to me in not the typical way that the other 13 have come. So I I noticed almost every day, and this was almost a year ago now, that I would come across very interesting sayings that I thought were pearls of wisdom or that offered something that I'd want to chew on, think about. So I started writing some of them down. And after I wrote a few of them down, and I would go back and I'd want to, think a little more deeply. Okay, I've sort of peeled the onion one layer off of what this means. Is there another layer to what it means? And oh, and who said that? And what was the context in which they said it? And so I just, without having a book in mind, started making sort of a list of what I thought were wise, interesting sayings and who said them and why and what was the context. And then I thought, well, I think I'm going to write a book and just do each chapter will begin with one wisdom. Um, and then I will develop that wisdom and try to, pick it apart and find different layers of meaning to it, and also give a little biographical information about whoever said it or wrote it originally, and what the context and the history was. And so I just started, doing one and then another and another and another and another, and eventually, when I got to about 50, my wife says, "So, when are you gonna stop?" And I said, "Well, I think I could probably get to 100." And she said, "No, that's too many. Pick another number that's not that many. Plus I'm getting tired of of you telling them to me." Uh, and she's my primary editor, so she also knew she was gonna have to edit the first draft. So I chose the number 72, made that my goal, and I'm 6 foot tall at 72 inches. There's some, if you research what is the mythological, mystical significance of 72, there's some stuff there, but it really doesn't have any more significant meaning as far as the book goes, other than I just thought, okay, that's a good place to stop.
Well, if you look at, are you familiar with numerology?
A little bit. I'm definitely not an expert on it.
Because if you take 72 and you add them together, that's 9. And while
Mhm.
we're talking, I'll look up what 9 means in numerology. But I bet you it means something. Um,
I'll bet it does too, and, 3, of course, is a very sacred number, the Trinity, um, and so 3 times 3, um, I'm sure that, yeah, numerologists could come up with a number of different significant, mystical, mythological references to 72.
almost all the mythological tales from around the world have patterns of the number 9 weaving through them. So it is a mystical number. And it's about, and that's really what you're talking about here, because you go back, it's not just, from the Bible or the Quran or from the Torah. It's from, the Greek mythology, and it's from modern history, and modern musicians and all kinds of stuff, right?
Correct, yeah, I mean, there's, sayings that come from, well, Lao Tzu, so, ancient Asian wisdom, modern Asian wisdom, Dalai Lama, but, yeah, Greek, Roman philosophers, the Bible, both New Testament, Old Testament, but then contemporary culture, Muhammad Ali is a source, Beatles are a source, Dolly Parton is a source. So, yeah, it's spread, and that's what I wanted to do, to sort of spread the whole history and cross-cultural sources of wisdom.
Now, in your research, and I know that you did quite a little bit for all of these, is there a common thread that runs through them all?
And not in the sense other than, um, each each one, at least in my view, offers something to think about just beyond kind of the superficial immediate response of what is this wisdom say, what is this quote saying? That each one of them has something deeper than, what you would just immediately how you would immediately respond to it. But there are definitely themes, several themes that weave through a lot of the wisdom. One, which is a theme that I've been dealing with in a lot of my writing really for a long time, is kind of the yin and yang of individuality and community, that, they're having my own individual identity is so important, but on the other hand, who am I without a community? And so that theme weaves through it. Light and darkness, and yin and yang, in the sense of how there's, almost opposite sides to so many aspects of reality, and yet if you just try to turn reality into the binary of light and dark, um, you're you're missing the depth also. And so there's like the Hegelian idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, new thesis is a way to look deeper, find deeper meanings, and find patterns in history too.
Well, I gotta ask you, because we talked about it, because I thought I was a Beatles aficionado. Apparently, there's a few things that I don't know, because one of the quotes is from the Beatles, and and my thought was, well, it has to be "All You Need Is Love," because that's one of their primary things. A lot of that weaves through a lot of their songs, a lot of their materials. And you said, nope, that ain't it. And so, and you said that it has something to do with that. Penny Lane, which is another song of theirs, weaves in it, and so, but I'm still lost. So, what was the Beatles quote?
It's the song is in my life.
Oh, 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 oh! That's my favorite song of all time. Do you know that song? They have to play at my funeral.
Really, it's in your will?
Well, it's in my son's heads.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I love that song too. And so I didn't really know anything about the song other than I've always loved it, and I certainly couldn't have recited the lyrics to you. I mean, some of them, maybe the chorus, but so,
There are places I remember.
there are places I remember. Yeah, that's how
Right.
it starts.
Yep.
And then and so the chapter that the topic of the chapter is about nostalgia. And because as I researched how John Lennon wrote the lyrics to
Yep.
it, and, why did he write the song? What was he thinking about? And so forth, is he actually wrote 2 versions of the song. And the first version,
I
he
didn't know
wrote
that.
it as almost like a child's, a kiddie song, kind of a happy, bubbly, funny, take like it was a bus ride around the neighborhood, and so it mentions all these places like Penny Lane, in the neighborhood where he grew up in Liverpool. And then he decided, well, I really want to have more of a universal appeal. I want to touch something deeper. So then the second version is in my life, the version that we hear. Um, and so he took his own experiences, but he he universalizes them into this feeling that we can all relate to. Of there are people, there are places that were meaningful to me earlier in my life, and some of them exist, some of them no longer exist, and yet each one of them has is like a marker in my life, and all of us can relate to that. Anybody who's at least gotten through adolescence, begins to have these nostalgic memories of our buddies that we no longer see, the places that we hung out, that places we played as kids, or the hangouts when we were teenagers, and we go back to those places and those people in our mind, even though they're no longer with us. And so that's the so the song is an exploration of Lennon's own nostalgia and the places that he picks out to use as examples. Excuse me, Kevin. I'm getting over a cold, so I may hack a little bit.
You're okay. The information is fascinating. So that's you're good.
Okay, thanks. And but so so each of us have these sort of sacred places and people that we memorialize in our memory. But the sense of nostalgia is very interesting because on the one hand, it's pleasurable, but on the other hand, it's painful. And so I describe the feeling that Lennon is evoking, and that I think nostalgia is the term that best captures it, as sweetly painful, or pleasurably painful. Because here again, it's that yin and yang of these opposites somehow meet uh, in our consciousness, in our feeling, and there's depth there that it surpasses sort of superficial understanding. Why is this one, this place where I mentioned in the book, because a lot of the book I'll use my own personal experience, so there's memoir in it. When we were kids, we played in this place called the College Hole. Um, Yeah, and it is called the College Hole because, our local college, Goshen College, dug, out the foundation for a building that wasn't built, and eventually this big hole just filled up with scrub and bushes and stuff, and the kids, we all played in it as we had, gang wars and hide and go seek, and just, all the wonderful things that kids do outdoors when they're on their own. And so that place, the college hole, evokes in my mind the whole experience of childhood, just, like that, with that one reference.
Well,
And,
see,
Yeah.
You and I were born in of an era where in order to go have fun, you had to go outside because there wasn't anything to do inside except watch, maybe, channel the 3 channels that were available. And
Yeah.
so, we went outside and we played war with a stick. And that was, and if those who had the best stick won. And there was a rifle or a sword or whatever it was. I have to tell you about that song. My
Uh-huh.
brother passed away 2 years ago. And the last conversation that I had with him, he was not able to speak anymore. He had stage 4 lung cancer, but he could hear and he could listen, and his significant other said, "Yeah, we're playing." I think it was a hymn of some kind, that was kind of somber and stuff. And she said, "But he doesn't want to hear, a hymn. He wants to hear something else." And I said, "Well, play this song." And
Oh,
I had them
man.
play "In My Life," and
Wow.
that was 2 days before he passed away.
That's I mean, it's so again, that's so sad, but it's also so sweet.
It was, and he took it the right way. He took it as in, remembering all the good times, remembering the people that you fell in love with, remember the things that you did, the things,
Mhm.
and because you're about to move on to another plane of existence, another place, but take a pause for a moment and just remember with nostalgia where you were. So I thought you picked that out beautifully.
Huh. Yeah, well, I'm so delighted to hear that, and I mean, it's interesting that in both of our lives, there would be this, this touch point in that song. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it really is.
hmm,
And I applaud you for this work because this is what's the cool thing about it is that this is a book that you can put on the coffee table and somebody can pick it up and they can read a saying or a wisdom, and then they can read about it and they can put it down and then pick it up the next time and stuff,
yeah.
or to read it all the way through because there's a lot of inspiration in it, isn't it? Isn't there?
Yeah, each chapter is standalone. I mean, it's the sort of book that you could even, if you look at the table of contents and go down there and, "Oh, well, number 36 looks interesting to me." Um, you could start with number 36. So I think there is a flow to it in the sense that these 72 wisdoms are the way they're ordered is they came to me in this order. So, but that's the only significance of the ordering. And it's to me, it's sort of remarkable how each one, in my mind, it makes sense that you know two follows one and three follows two and so forth. And the chapters tend to get a little bit longer for as you go further into the book, and I think that's because in my own mind, what was happening is I was getting sort of deeper and deeper into how I approached um, each wisdom, and so it took more words to explain that process and what I got out of it.
Is it possible that because of what you were doing with each wisdom, that you were gaining wisdom at the same time, and so therefore it required more in-depth explanation the farther you went into the book?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, a friend was the other day was asking me, well, so I could just start at the end and read the last one, and then I I would have gained all the wisdom. I said, well, no, it's that's not exactly how it works. I think there was a process that I went through that it wasn't planned in the sense of my goal is to reach the 72nd level of wisdom. It was just that I would kind of open myself up to what will I discover today that seems meaningful, that seems worth holding on to and recording in written form. And each day, I mean, it wasn't every single day, it wasn't 72 days in a row, but it was usually about two a week um, that it would just, something would grab me and say, oh, that's it. That's the next one. And so that's how the book evolved.
When you say that they just kind of came to you, where did they come from?
Well, there, are 2 sources that I use several times. One is, I get an email, a daily email called Inspired Quotes,
Sure.
and so, yeah, so if you're familiar with that, it it, it generally will start out with one quote, either a famous saying or a very incisive saying, and then it'll have just one little paragraph about who said it. And then sometimes they'll have a list of a bunch of different quotes. So that was one source that I used for, oh, probably three, four, five, several of the quotes came from that. Another source that I used for several was um, an e-letter that I get called The Marginalian, and it's from a philosopher named Maria Popova, and she's a brilliant writer, thinker, artist, and I get a weekly newsletter from her. It's not. It's a personal essay, and she picks out different topics and goes into depth. And so a couple of the quotes come from her, and a couple others come from sources that she relied on. And then the others are just completely random. One is from a blog that my wife wrote about coincidence, and two of them are from books that I've written. Um, Two of them are from a friend who's a philosopher who, when he heard I was writing this book, sent me about 50 quotes that he thought I should consider using, and I actually do use two of them. And then they, like in my life, I heard that song, and I had just been talking to an old friend who I grew up with. And there aren't that many people that I see with any regularity that were friends of mine when we were kids.
Sure.
But he lives not too far away, so about once a month we get together for lunch, and we get nostalgic together. And so we had our lunch, and then I think I was driving home, and I in my life came on the radio, and I thought, oh my God, I just had the experience that John Lennon is singing about. So then I Googled the lyrics and got the lyrics. And so, that's the start of that chapter.
I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that a lot of the things that came to you, came to you for a reason, and that they were to be put into the book, and so that's why see, I get messages through music all the time. And it's either one thing or another that I'm either thinking about or want to do. So I would say that this book in and of itself may not be divinely inspired in total, but I think there was a hand in that because um, this is wisdoms. Putting these together is a really cool idea. Now, if you have this wisdom in your book, I will be absolutely blown away because you probably never seen the movie, but um, did you ever? Well, let me ask you: did you ever see the movie Braveheart?
Yes. Yeah. Mel Gibson.
Yes, there's a saying when, his father has been killed and they were washing him up back in the and then, Mel Gibson, as a little boy, had a premonition that his father turned his head, and he said to him, do you remember what he said?
No, I don't.
"Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it." And see, for me, that is a wisdom of I would have to come up with well, let me ask you, what would you come up with that if that was one of the wisdoms, would that be one of courage? Would that be one of thoughtfulness? Would that be one of follow your heart and you can follow your passion, you can do whatever you want to? What word would you put to that?
Yeah, but see, that's what's wonderful about I mean, you just experienced what I was talking about when I say you come across this wisdom, and as as you think about it more deeply, it's multi-layered.
Yes.
'Cause you're right. I mean, you could take that, "Oh, well, that means, yeah, go out and be determined and, fulfill your destiny." Or it just means be personally courageous when you have a challenge, face it, don't turn away from it. Or does it mean expand your heart, be a more caring person? So so if I had come across that, and it's a wonderful one, if I had come across that, that's what I would do. I would, first of all, say what the context was and where it came from, and is there a history to it? Was there a saying that it came out of? Because some of the sayings that I deal with in the book actually is like the second or third version of an earlier wisdom. But anyway, so you dig into it, and then you think about these different meanings, and then you try to okay, but so how deep can I go? What's the bottom layer? What's the when I peel the onion, what's at the very center of it? Or is there just one? Maybe I'm just left with several.
Well, I have never considered Dolly Parton. She's a songwriter, she's a singer. Never considered her work to be particularly deep or wisdom oriented or impactful, but apparently there are some. So, what did you find in her work?
Yeah, interestingly, it's not, a song lyric.
Oh,
It's a statement she made, and the context is, um, sh okay, so she wrote a song. And, of course, now I'm blanking. I can grab the book and look it up, but the particular song isn't that important. The story is she wrote a song that Elvis wanted to record, and this was when she was a fairly young songwriter. So she'd had a couple hits that were on the country charts, but she was making her living at that point as a songwriter, not as a performer, although she was performing, and she was on the Grand Ole Opry at that point with Porter Wagner. So and this was when she was in her, early 30s, I think. So anyway, so Elvis wants to record the song, and the rascally Tom Parker, Colonel Parker, says Elvis is gonna get not only the royalties for the performance of the song, he's gonna get 50% for the song's lyrics, as if he wrote it, as if he was a co-writer. Well, and Dolly, who was absolutely thrilled when she heard Elvis wants to perform one of her record one of her songs, was like, "Well, wait a minute, that's not right." And so she tries to negotiate with Colonel Tom, and he's insistent, and so she's finally digs in her heels and says, "No, uh, I'm not gonna give in to that." And the song then goes on to be recorded by her and by Whitney Houston,
it was that one. I thought so.
and became the biggest seller that Dolly Parton ever wrote as both a songwriter and as a performer. So she made millions off the song, and, so the saying is all about, deciding what's important to you and to stick up for yourself.
That's
And
that's
I can't remember the exact saying.
well, that's really cool because another one of my favorite actors growing up had a similar story, and that would be Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, yeah.
When he was putting Rocky together, and he'd written the screenplay, and they said, "Well, we'd like to buy your screenplay for," I think it was a quarter million, and he said, "No, no, I want to be Rocky." And they said, "Oh no, no, nobody knows who you are. You can't do that." So he stuck to his guns, and he ended up being Rocky. Won Best Picture, Best Actor, all that kind of good stuff because he believed in himself. And at the time, he said when they offered him that quarter million, he said, "I didn't have enough money for dog food," and he stuck to his guns anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly the point is if you have done something and it's yours and you believe in it, then that's it. Hang on to it. Don't, don't give it away. Don't compromise. There are some things that are worth not compromising on. A lot of things, and I mean, politics is the art of compromise. I didn't use that. I that isn't one of the 72, but that's actually quoted in the book because there's a couple of chapters about politics. Um, but many things life requires compromise, and compromise works for the benefit of all involved. But in some cases, it doesn't. And so you have to have the wisdom to know in when can you just not compromise. Another one, which is related, is a quote by Vladimir Zelensky, and it's about how Ukraine cannot compromise. This is an existential question. We will if we give in, if we compromise, if we say, okay, Putin, you can have those territories. Well, what's next? And so he gave this wonderful speech to the British Parliament, where he's essentially ripping off Churchill and Shakespeare both, uh, and which was pretty clever since you're speaking to the Brits. Um, but about how Churchill's we will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the land, we'll fight on the sea, we'll never give in. So Zelensky gives that same kind of speech, and and makes the point that we can't we will fight to the last person. This is an existential threat we're facing, and so again, this is a situation where you can't compromise.
We as humans sometimes can come up with the most amazing things in the proper moment of time, and that's one of them. What Churchill said was another one, and it's great that you're putting all of these together in one spot so that people can remember them because that's the thing about us is we tend to forget um these wonderful wisdoms that we all need to remember, and you put them into context, and you did a really nice job of putting that all together with neuroscience and astrophysics, and you did a lot. How long did it take you to research this thing?
It was about a 10-month process.
No wonder your wife was saying, "Okay, enough, please."
Yeah.
But that's wonderful. When does the book come out, or did it come out already?
It came out about a month ago.
How's it doing?
Well, I no, but of the 14 I've written, none of them have sold as many as I think they should, because I think everybody should read it.
I
But,
I agree with you.
it's selling. It's not in the it's not moved up to a bestseller status, with Amazon or on the New
Oh, but
York, book,
you know what I keep hearing though, Jeff, just by the way, we're talking with Jeff Rasley. If you want to find out more about him, you can go to, oddly enough, jeffreyrasley.com, and you can look at all the books he's written. And I highly suggest that you pick them up and to look at them, because you know it's been out a month and they don't really have numbers yet. It takes them a while to come up with that. And this is one of those books that I applaud you, because whether it be tomorrow, the next day, next year, in 5 years, somebody's going to pick up your book and it's going to mean a lot to them. And that could be somebody that picks it up in a used bookstore. This is just wandering by, and that's what they pick up. And it means something. You've done something good for humanity to put all of these together, and that makes sense. And I thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate, not only getting to be on your show again, but just that, that you've responded the way that you have.
Well, I think I love ancient wisdom. I love what people have come across as been important things for us to remember, and I think they're just little nuggets. These sayings and these wisdoms are just nuggets for us all to remember. You're not the only one who has a cold in your house, by the way.
Yeah, I was wondering, what is my wife knows that we're on the air. Why did she decide to come down the hallway and start coughing just to add a little to the soundtrack?
Exactly, but this is live and this is real life, and that's
Yeah, in
that's
fact,
what.
a little bit early, I don't know if you noticed, but my kitten was crawling around behind
Yes,
me. You
I
saw
saw this
that
little
too?
tail. It was going
Yeah,
like this around you and stuff. But that's
yeah,
cool, because
that's
that's what makes this fun.
it's real life, we're not in a studio.
Nope, nope, and we mean it when we talk about this. And you've been on the show before, and we were talking about some of your other books. And you've got quite a catalog now. What is it that motivates you to write, and yeah, and to come up with the ideas that you have for all of the books you've written?
Well, I think it's an addiction. Uh, I I have 2 addictions. One and they're both good, I think. One is writing and the other is exercise.
Ah,
When I go for a day without writing something, I just don't feel good. If I go for a day without exercising, I don't feel good. And, so whether whether it's helpful to anybody else or not, it's kept me healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, and the other thing as far as the writing is I've spent my life with other writers. My mom was a journalist. My step grandfather was the editor of our local newspaper. My stepfather succeeded him, became the editor. My mom was the journalist, then the city editor. My wife is a novelist and an English professor. So I'd be the oddball out if I didn't. My brother is the editor of a political newsletter. So it's, you know, I it, if I wasn't at least something of a writer, I wouldn't have anything to say to these people. So
well, you do not have to take anybody's coat or backseat to anybody.
well, I'm not sure my family would agree with you, but thanks for that.
Well, family is family. What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
But I do have to ask you, because um one of the chapters in your book is about the deepest of philosophical questions. So in your books, in your writings, what are some of the deepest philosophical questions that we face? I would think death and life after death and that kind of thing, but that's just me. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, so that's definitely one. How do you face your own death? How do we cope with knowing we will die? So what's the proper attitude towards that? Another is, what is the good life? How do
Ooh.
I live a meaningful life? because so much of life just comes at us, and we're just reacting. We get up, we do our job, we feed the cat, clean the cat's box off. But how how do we feel like this is a meaningful life? What's required for us to feel that way? And then, when we figure out what is a meaningful life, how do we implement it? How do we live it out? And so I address those issues. Um, and then, actually, you brought it up at the very beginning with the Beatles song, Love. Um, how what is love? And what is the highest and best ethic to live by? Which, you know, is on the one hand is sort of anybody who studied ethics knows that it's to love your neighbor as yourself. Um, and it's easy to say, but what does that really mean? Um,
If you hate yourself, you can hate your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're back to the yin and yang.
Exactly. One of my favorite quotes, and it probably didn't make it in the book because you didn't find it, but I find it to be, it's one of those sayings that is layered like an onion, but it's very simple. It's just four words, which is "We are all one."
Mhm. Yeah,
And
well, yes, and that is definitely a theme, that intersects with several chapters.
oh, good, good. So because that is, from when you look at that statement, "We are all one." It's like, what does that mean? Does that mean we're all one person? Does that mean we're all one spirit? Does that mean, or are we all the same? Are we? Do we need to treat each other like we would treat ourselves? Which is taking off of the biblical prophecy and all, or the biblical statement, as well as other philosophies, which is, treat each other as you would treat yourself, kind of thing.
The chapter that introduces that concept, the quote comes from Walt Whitman.
And it is.
Well, it's from his poem Leaves of Grass. Um, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it goes something like, we um, we all come from the same atoms, and my atoms are your atoms, and that's not exactly it, but that's what we all come from the same source. We all share in the same stuff. We are one, and so, okay, so what does that mean, especially when you look at the divided world we live in? And oh my God, our own polarized body politic. Uh, and yet, despite all these divisions, it doesn't change the truth that we did all come from the same source. This also kind of reminds me of another uh, theme that kind of weaves its way through is consciousness and coincidence, and how did we get here? And if you think about an individuality, so the Big Bang, for you to be you, the Big Bang had to happen. And then the elements that were spewed out eventually had to coalesce into the sun and coalesce into the earth, and then the molecules that somehow became organic life had to happen, and then mammals had to evolve, and then your parents had to feel that spark at the right time, and then the doctor had to deliver you correctly, I mean, the infinite number of coincidences that had to happen for us to be sharing this moment right now. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling when you think about it in that way. And so is that a plan? Is it all coincidence? What does that mean, to think about it in that way? And the miracle of consciousness. I mean, that we are conscious, experience not just alive, but experiencing this moment consciously. You think of our brain chemistry, the complexity of it for us to be conscious beings. It's okay, so is it miraculous? Does that mean there had to be some kind of divine creator because it's just so amazing? Or is it just this whole series of, kind of accidents, coincidence? But or do those series of accidents as coincidence rise into the meaning of what we are experiencing? And so, different chapters approach that whole mess from different angles.
Well, you can get really, really deep into the weeds if you chose to go down that rabbit hole because, there's so many. The way I look at it is that we'll find out when we get there. No, because nobody knows, and nobody can tell you for sure what's going to happen when we get there. But you and I are a little bit longer in the tooth, and so my destiny when I was 20, thinking of what it was going to be like between then and 60 is different than it is when I think of 60 to 100. Because the chances, well, anyway, but but the whole thing is different. And why are we here? What is our purpose? What are we, and I guess we get to just, that's a beautiful thing about our lives, I think, is that we get to decide what our purpose is and why we're here.
Yeah, and it's important for us on the one hand to just live in the moment, to enjoy this moment, to take it as it comes, but on the other hand, to learn from the past, to find meaning in the past and not just think of it as, well, that's just something that's past. There's no more significance to that, that the past has meaning. And on the other hand, if we don't think about the future, if we don't have any plans, if we just totally live in the moment, then we're probably going to run off off the side of a cliff. So and then one of the chapters deals with this of the whole sense of time, and living meaningfully, that you have to do all three. You have to value the past, understand the meaning of the past, live in the moment, and also plan for the future. That's all required, to live a meaningful life. Because if you just do one of those 3 or even 2 of those 3, it's not gonna go well.
I know, I agree. One of my favorite sayings is, "Your life is empty and meaningless." And when I say that, people go, what do you mean? My life is not empty and meaningless." And what I mean by that is every morning, picture if you will, every morning you get up in the morning, and I know you love to work out, so you probably do that first thing. But you get up in the morning and you get to decide what your life is gonna mean for you that day. And then you get to decide um, um, how you're going to fill your day up with whatever you have decided is going to be the meaning for that day. So you have the choice to be able to do that, and then that leads into tomorrow. And so you're continually working based upon the experience that you had yesterday, working on tomorrow. How's that for a physical physiological no philosophical thought? How about that? How is that?
Yeah, I'm darn, if only if I write an epilogue or volume 2, you're in.
I I would, well, these are all things that I've stolen from people, Jeff. So it doesn't, it's just, one of those things. But there are things that, and I think it happens to all of us, at least it should. We should take the time to read something, to listen to the song, to the lyrics, because they have meaning for us. They meant something to somebody else, or they wouldn't have written it or sung about it. And so we can benefit from what they're doing as well. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's really, I guess, the fundamental motivation of, why I did that book is that's exactly what you said, that each of these sayings had meaning to me, and then the more I thought about them and the research I did, they had even more meaning, and hopefully to other people as well. And there's a couple, there's only, 2 or 3 like this that I disagree with, that the statement that I start out as thinking, "Oh, this is there's real wisdom here," and the more I thought about it and looked into it, I thought, "No, wait a minute. That's actually I don't agree with that." And so then I would treat the statement fairly, explain where it came from and who said it or wrote it, and but then explain why I think that that's actually not true. That's that's sending you down, the rabbit hole you don't wanna go down.
Exactly. By the way, I could talk to you for hours. I really could. And you are a wonderful interview, a wonderful author. Go pick up the book 72 Wisdoms. Go to jeffreyrasley.com. That's Rasley.com. Is it Rasley or Rasley?
Well, phonetically, it should be Rasley, but my family, for the most part, at least when they're sober, sa pronounce it with the long A, Raisley.
Well, I love that. And by the way, some of you, if it's okay with you, some of your wisdoms are going to appear on a T-shirt that people will be able to buy on positivetalkradio.net. I'm putting sayings on back of T-shirts that mean a lot to me, like your heart is free, have the courage to follow it, and things like that. I'm going to be putting those up there.
Oh,
So
that's really cool. A few years ago, just out of the blue, I get this email from a Norwegian artist, and she said, "I want to put the title of your last book on a T-shirt and design a little artistic thing to go with it." And it was "You have to get lost before you can be found." That was the title of the book, and so yeah, they're out there. You can buy a T-shirt now that says "You have to get lost before you can be found." Jeff Raisley with a picture of a mountain on it.
and that is an amazing wisdom all by itself. And that you could have an entire show based upon that wisdom.
Yeah. Well, that is as I said, I use 2 of my own wisdoms in the book, and that's one of them.
Well, and Jeff, thank you so much for being here. If there's anything that I can ever do for you, I would love for you to come back and talk about this book and others some more next time, if you would be so kind. So thank
I would be delighted to. So, anytime you've got a slot open, let me know.
I will, because I've got an announcement coming up later on in the next week that we're changing what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be doing more of this, like 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, kind of thing. So,
Wow,
but I'll save that for later. But Jeff, thank you
okay.
so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me, Kevin. Namaste to you.
Thank you, and namaste to you. And go to his website, which is jeffreyrasley.com. And if you'll wait right there, I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of positivetalkradio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named positivetalkradio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another, because each other's